Let's talk some baseball. We haven't really gone through them. We talked with Chris Lemonis about Mississippi State. Hey, Dad, your impressions of the opening weekend for Mississippi State?
It's obviously a very small sample size. It's just the first 3 games. But they played a similar kind of opponent last year in VMI, maybe even a worse opponent. And they didn't look the same, right? I mean, I mentioned to him, they only had 9 walks all weekend this weekend. Last year they had 12 in one game. They weren't pitching the ball all over the yard. They weren't walking guys. They weren't booting the baseball. They looked like a normal, regular old baseball team. Now, they let a game get away from them Saturday. They should have swept this series, but they didn't. But just to not be putting guys on base freely for a 3-game series, they just looked better. I mean, outside of Colby Holcomb, who struggled Saturday, I thought the pitching staff as a whole, they looked competent. They looked like they were competitive. I was really, really impressed with Kyle Steven. I thought he looked like the part of a guy who could end up as State's Friday night guy. Very impressed with Gerangelo yesterday. I thought he was good in his outing. And then, in the lineup, you're just missing some key guys there. Kohler is the guy who they need to get back in the lineup. David Mershon being out is hurting them. Ross Highfield needs to get going. He only played 1 game this week. He wasn't able to catch. He DH'd on Saturday. Once they have that full lineup in, I think they can maybe get a little bit of momentum going. But by and large, they played probably a little better than I thought they would, but they did lose a game. And with that schedule, as you kind of hinted at, you said it very nicely. The truth of the matter is the schedule is designed to pile up wins in the non-conference. And if you get too many losses, you're going to be in real trouble because your strength of schedule is going to be low. Your RPI is going to be low. You're going to take some losses that are quad 3 and quad 4. This needs to be a 5-0 week for Mississippi State. Maybe they could lose 1. They could lose 1 and be okay, but you just can't get to March 15th in that LSU series and already have 4 or 5 losses. You just can't.
Yeah.
Kyle instead of Call really disappoints me, by the way. Richard won't get that, and that's okay.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I thought when Lemonis said his name, it sounded a little more like Call.
It should be.
So, and then the SID on Saturday said Cole, but it's Kyle.
There's no
it's just
way
a
that's
weird
Cole.
Spelling of Kyle. I know. So, yeah, I laughed really. I chuckled at your tweet in the press box when it was Kyle Drogo.
I've been doing that all season.
Yes. If he eats a horse's heart out there on the mound, I'll let you know.
But, yeah, I had somebody ask me last night, he's like, well, what impressed you about State? And I was like, number 1, I got to watch all 3 games. That was impressive. But number 2, but 2,
I feel like I should explain why that they only carried 1 game. So that was not a school production in the way that Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Southern Miss produce the games that are streamed online at either the SEC Network Plus or ESPN Plus. Spectrum Sports is Hawaii's equivalent of Fox Sports South or CSS in years gone by or everybody's favorite Bally Sports Southeast or whatever. It's their regional sports network. And so they carry lots of events, but they don't exclusively carry Hawaii baseball. They carried the season opener, obviously, but I think they had a women's basketball game the next day. And my guess is that they don't have the personnel or the equipment or the budget to do multiple events at the same time. And it sounds like they didn't have the scheduling availability for it either. And, your response might be to, well, why doesn't Hawaii produce their own games internally? My guess is it's a budget issue. It's just a guess. Borky mentioned it earlier. I thought they were pretty entertaining.
That's a fair guess, too, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, from the State perspective.
All right, Borky goes, anyway.
But part number 2 is
back to State.
Point, they didn't give free bases. They fielded the ball when it was hit to them. They threw strikes. They didn't walk guys. And it sounds so elementary, but my goodness, what a stark difference from every series last year that they fielded the ball, threw guys out, struck guys out, threw pitches over the plate. et cetera, et cetera.
I thought Borky was throwing shade at Ole Miss when he was saying that, but he was throwing shade at Mississippi State last year.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they were a year ago.
Yes.
They were not a normal baseball team last year. Normal baseball teams don't have an ERA over 7 and walk guys at 6, 7, 8, 9 per game. That's not normal. A normal baseball team doesn't have 2 guys who start half the season fielding under 850. By the way, Slade Alford, SEC Player of the Week. Congrats to him out there at Georgia. It's just not normal. It was not a normal thing last year. Borky's correct. They just look like an average SEC baseball team. And that will be a huge step forward after these last 2 seasons, if they can maintain that. Bo in Indianola asked if I changed my opinion. No, it's just one series. No, I'm not going to change it. I need to see a lot more. But that was a good start. That was a good start to the season for State. They would have liked to have gotten all 3, but it's baseball, man. Sometimes you just lose a game. Ain't nobody going undefeated.
Did you think Air Force was good? Like in watching them, did they look like a good baseball team to you?
They've got some talent. They've got a couple guys that can play. But I mean, if they make the NCAA tournaments, because the rest of that league's just not very good.
Yeah.
A couple of bats returning that hit over 400 last year, something like that.
Yeah, they have some hitters.
Yeah. And that was a pretty clutch win for them in the Saturday game. I mean, that's a game that you can very easily, as the road team, kind of allow the environment and the pressure to eat you up, and they didn't. They got the big base hit to drive in a couple of runs and come from behind and get the win. And Mississippi State couldn't do anything in the bottom half of the inning. So
it is good to know that our soon-to-be service members are cool under pressure.
Yeah,
that is always encouraging. Except for it's the exact opposite of when like the Army rifle team loses to like Ole Miss and rifle. It's like why is Ole Miss out shooting the United States Military Academy? Like that's a little concerning. With all due respect to the Ole Miss rifle team, you shouldn't be beating the Army and shooting guns. I think that's a sport that they should be better than Ole Miss at.
Well, maybe some of those fine young women are just going the college route, and then they're going to go into OCS after.
Either way,
maybe they'll end up in the Army.
Either way, does nobody else think like, hey, this is a big problem here?
I get what you're. Smell what you're stepping in.
I'm joking. They're college students. It's not the same. I know.